Okay, well, good afternoon. I say good afternoon. It's afternoon here in sunny Bournemouth. Thank you for joining us today. As my colleague just said, we're coming to you from the Department of Archaeology, Anthropology and Forensic Sciences in the university. I am senior lecturer in forensic anthropology, so I'm involved with a lot of the postgraduate courses that we run, and I'm going to be taking you through some of these during the next 45 minutes to an hour. Just a point to make before I start. Every few years in this country we have to revamp and refresh, revitalise all our courses, make sure everything is completely up to date with them. And this is a process that we've been going through in recent months, and so we're offering some new courses now, some slightly new titles, some slightly revised content of our existing courses. So everything I'm going to tell you now is up to date as far as I can say from today. And there may be some very minor changes, but we're at a point now when things are not likely to change very much from this point onwards. So just to say what I'll be talking about today, first I'll say a little bit about Bournemouth, where we are and what it's like living here and working here. A little bit about the university, about our faculty, which is where our department sits, and then I'll go into some detail about the nature and the content of our degrees, and then just to say a little bit at the end about the support that's available for postgraduate students at Bournemouth, and then we can move on to questions at the end if anybody has anything they wanted to ask. So first of all, to say a little bit about Bournemouth. You may be familiar with Bournemouth already, or you may not, but we're at the very southern end of Britain. We're on the south coast, which is a very nice part of the country. This is actually the sunniest part of Britain that we live in, and Bournemouth is a very nice sort of medium-sized town, very nice place to live as well as a nice place to work and to study. We have many miles of sandy beaches, varying from the very busy one that you can see on the slide there, to some very quieter ones as you go further miles up the coast. The town is a very sort of energetic and vibrant place. It's a very young town. The nightlife, I am told, is very good by our students, who seem to have a very good social life. They have a better social life than me. But ultimately, we're very nicely situated. Just to say a little bit about Bournemouth University, we are again I thoroughly enjoy working here. Actually, Bournemouth is a very youthful and a very energetic university, and has a very sort of young, sort of vibrant outlook. It has we have a very dynamic range of staff here. As you can see on the slide there, as it says, we have over 17,000 students, of which usually around about 2,000 of whom are international students, and the majority of our international students tend to be taking postgraduate degrees. So what we find is our students that come and study master's degree courses with us are usually studying with other students from a wide range of international backgrounds, and as it says there, from over 100 different countries. On my own master's degree, I've got something like 12 different nationalities studying this year. And another point there, though, is that from our size, on the one hand, we're a university that's big enough to offer really excellent experiences to students, but we're still small enough to give individual attention to all our students, particularly at postgraduate level, and to know everybody by name. And in fact, one of my recent graduates has now gone on to another institution which is much bigger, and she hadn't realised, she now tells me, how much individual attention she got when she was at Bournemouth. And another reason I enjoy working here is that we're a university that fires on all cylinders, in that we perform very well in our teaching, but we also perform very well in our research. We're at the leading edge of all the different areas of research that we're involved in. And then on top of that, something we also value very highly at Bournemouth is professional practice. And what you'll find is all the staff here are also involved in professional practice within their own field, in taking our research and applying it in the real world. And that's the effect that we want to have on our students. And that's something that we are known for at Bournemouth. We're known as a university that produces employable people with a high level of skills, and you can see from some of the awards and prizes that are mentioned on this slide that these are things that we are recognised for. So another aspect of Bournemouth that is really very helpful, I find, is that we have a really good set of facilities. We have a very nice modern campus being invested in all the time. New buildings are going up all the time, and these are purpose designed to suit the kind of teaching and research that we're engaged in at the moment. And it's nice that as staff here we're actually being involved in the process of designing the buildings that we want to work in, and this is going very well. Previously I once worked in a different institution that had a very nice 100-year-old Edwardian campus that was very beautiful to look at, but actually very difficult to work in. Because we have purpose-designed modern facilities, that makes our lives a great deal easier at Bournemouth. In terms of how the university is organised, it's organised into 6 different faculties, within which our department sits in the Faculty of Science and Technology. And so you can probably spot by the name that this is where all the more scientific and more technical areas of the university are placed. And so within this, we're then further divided. We've got 6 academic departments. So we have our own department, Archaeology, Anthropology and Forensic Science, and we also have computing, creative technologies, design and engineering. We also have life and environmental sciences, so these are ecologists and the sort of biological and environmental sciences, and then we also have psychologists. But even coming back to what may sound the less scientific areas of this, such as archaeology, we actually lean towards really the hard science end of archaeology rather than the arts side of it. And again, these are the areas that we're known for. So coming on to our own department, we are the Department of Archaeology, Anthropology and Forensic Science. These are 3 areas that really sit together very nicely, essentially because they take similar approaches. It doesn't matter whether you work in forensic science and you're trying to reconstruct recent events that have happened, or whether you work in archaeology and you may be trying to make sense of and to reconstruct events that have happened hundreds or thousands of years ago, or whether you work in anthropology and you're interested in human populations and the changes that have occurred within people over time. What we're all trying to do is to reconstruct past events from looking at different kinds of material evidence. And in that regard, these 3 areas gel together very well. And this means that while we have staff that are from these 3 different individual areas, we actually have a great deal of collaborative work that goes on between us, because we tend to ask similar questions and take similar approaches. And there's obviously a lot of crossover as well. So whilst we have the pure version of biological anthropology going on in our department, just looking at the evolution of humans and the changes in human populations over time, we also have the applied version of forensic anthropology, where we're asking specific questions related to the courts and related to assisting the police. Forensic science speaks for itself, and then we also have a range of different kinds of archaeology going on in the department, from maritime archaeology, so looking at submerged remains in marine contexts, to the archaeology of landscapes, to a very specific application again, in that we're very well known at Bournemouth for forensic archaeology. And this brings me on to what I was specifically going to talk about today, which is our postgraduate programs, our master's degree programs. And if I dwell on the current slide that you can see now for a minute or two, that actually, even though there's no text on it, this really gives quite a nice nice impression of the general character of a lot of our postgraduate teaching within our department. So what you can see in the images in the top left there, which is given away by the poison bottle in the middle, this is our forensic toxicology masters, and the gentleman that you can see there holding up the little glass vial and looking at it is our head of department. So this is my boss. This is Professor David Osselton, and he is perhaps obviously a toxicologist. So David is an expert in poisons. He's one of the most experienced forensic scientists in the country, one of the most experienced expert witnesses in the country, has been involved in a very large number of high-profile cases during his career, and David is a really very useful person to have in charge of a department of this kind, and he oversees all of our forensic teaching in particular. Then in the top right there you can see that's something from my own subject, forensic anthropology. So while I'm interested in human remains, and particularly human remains from archaeological sites, so they tend to be people who have been dead for some time and who are now just skeletonized remains. This is also relevant and useful in relation to modern forensic cases, and this is an area in particular where we're not just involved in doing research related to forensic anthropology, we're also involved in practice, and we regularly assist our local police with cases involving bone. And then what you can see on the bottom right there are various activities undertaken by our forensic archaeology students. And the point here is that the material that we look at, particularly if it's human remains, it doesn't just appear in our lab one day. It has to be located, and these remains have to be recovered from the ground in a scientific way that will hold water if it's presented to a court. And so our forensic archaeology and forensic anthropology courses fit very well together. And then what you can see in the bottom left there is some images relating to some of the other kinds of anthropology we do, particularly biological anthropology, where we have some students who are more interested in the very deep human past, in looking at human evolution. Some students are interested in looking at primates, and other students are more interested in archaeological populations. So they may not be interested in the people who lived 1 million years ago, but they may be interested in people who lived 1,000 or 2,000 years ago. So what you can see now, this is the list of postgraduate courses that we currently offer within the department. And as I say, we've been slightly refreshing and revising these recently, largely in response to the demand that we've had from students, but looking over recent years at the kinds of courses that students tend to want. And so I'll run through this list now, and then I'll break it down and go into each program in detail so people can have an idea of what the differences are between them and what the individual characters are of these different degrees. So first of all, we have our MSc Archaeology, which in a way speaks for itself, in that this is it's designed to be a postgraduate archaeology qualification that will appeal to two types of student, really. First, it will appeal to students who have already studied archaeology and who now want to go on to gain a master's level qualification in that, and who want to be able to tailor it to their own particular interests within that field. And then also we wanted to put together a master's degree that can be used as a conversion program. So somebody may have studied a less related subject at undergraduate level, but they now want to convert to having, for example, sometimes we have students who studied history at undergraduate level, and now they want to convert to combine that with archaeology as a postgraduate, and this degree works really very well for that. The next one on the list is the MSc in Bioarchaeology. That's really the short name. What we could have called it is Human Bioarchaeology, and this is essentially largely focused on the study of human remains, but it's the study of human remains from past populations. So although it doesn't quite go into the deep past of human evolution, this is looking at people who lived hundreds or thousands of years ago. Then we have the MSc in Biological Anthropology, and this really does look at the whole story of human development. And so whilst the people taking that degree will study modern humans, or the modern human skeleton and how we interpret it, at the same time this is all done with a view to better understanding human evolution. Then forensic anthropology, this is perhaps obviously a very specialised degree in that it focuses on a particular area, and the area that it focuses on is modern forensic applications of biological anthropology. So how do we identify people? How can we assist the police in explaining to them what may have happened to human remains when they're located? How can we tell how long somebody's been dead? How can we tell what kind of injuries they may have suffered, and so on. Then we have forensic archaeology, which I've alluded to already, that this is really how do we locate and recover buried material. And this is basically how do we take sort of traditional archaeological techniques and apply them in a modern context in a way that's going to be useful to the police and to the courts. Then we have our forensic toxicology by research master's degree, and so this is the study of drugs and poisons and their effects on the human body. How we can detect them, how we can predict or comment on the effects that they're likely to have had, and again, this is not being done as a purely academic exercise. It's being done in the service of the courts. And with a view to turning out analytical scientists who are capable of acting as an expert witness for the police and for the court. Then we have our MSc in maritime archaeology, and again this relates to our location in the part of Britain that we're in. Again, we're on the sunny south coast, and we have some highly specialised members of staff who are very, very experienced in diving, in exploring wrecks, in recovering the material from shipwrecks and other submerged contexts and submerged landscapes, and making sense of those. And here in Dorset, there are something like 5,000 shipwrecks along our local coast. There is no shortage of research material for people who are interested in that area. And then lastly, we have our MSc in osteoarchaeology, and this is a postgraduate degree that again looks at the human skeleton from the point of view of the past in looking at archaeological populations, but it also combines that with looking at the bones of non-human animals as well. And this is a degree that is often very much favoured by students who want to go into field archaeology as a profession, or students who want to go and work in commercial archaeology. So in Britain, for example, archaeology is part of the planning process, and whenever a developer builds a new building, if archaeology is discovered, then the developer has to pay to have it investigated. And what we find is that the commercial units that employ those kind of archaeologists, they like people who've got more than one set of skills. They like it if you can write human bone reports. They will be very pleased with that, but they also like it if you can also make sense of animal bone assemblages, and they also like it if you can survey the site, drive a Land Rover, and do all sorts of other things as well. But this is what they're looking for, is multi-skilled people, and that's really what that degree is aimed towards. Now, something that we are very well known for at Bournemouth, as I've said, firstly is turning out employable people, but really one of the biggest reasons why we turn out employable people is because we turn out practical people. And all of our master's degrees have a very strong emphasis on practical experience, on getting your hands on the material yourself, not just reading about it or going along to people's lectures. And the reason we can do this is because we have access to a really nice set of facilities at Bournemouth. First of all, we have access to some really nice outdoor facilities. And again, Partly this relates to the nature of where we're situated in Britain. Here we're in what's sometimes called an enormous outdoor laboratory. We have fantastic marine environments. We also have fantastic terrestrial environments. The geology of this part of Britain preserves archaeological material very, very well. It preserves human and animal bone very, very well, and our students benefit from that regularly with the excavations that we run. The place that's mentioned on the slide that you can see now is a place called Trigon Estate. This is where we have our own outdoor crime scene facility. It is a large area of woodland on a large country estate that we have access to, where we can run all sorts of simulations and research projects that students have been involved in, which I'll come back to those shortly. Then we also have a crime scene training centre where students have access to basically a centre where we can simulate domestic crime scenes in businesses, and so on. And this is something that the toxicology students particularly benefit from. This image here gives an example of some of the sort of simulation exercises that we tend to run. This is quite a complex exercise that you can see there. This is being done in the woodland on Trigon Estate there. This is a simulated mass grave. We have members of staff who've been involved with excavating mass graves in places like Iraq or the former Yugoslavia, and they've brought their expertise home with them and brought it to bear in training our students. And so we run a wide variety of different simulations that we set up. So as you can see, this is quite an elaborate one where we will essentially get hold of a big JCB, big digger, and we have simulated the kinds of mass graves that some of our staff have been involved in excavating. So the skeletons that you can see there are many of our plastic teaching skeletons, and there is a team of students who've had a week firstly to find this context that we have set up for them, and then to excavate it scientifically and to work together as a team. And every day somebody will be in charge of running the team, somebody will be in charge of looking after any objects and artifacts that are found, someone will be the photographer, someone will be involved in surveying, and we rotate that around. And what we're really interested in is good practical teamwork. We have a very nice suite of laboratories at Bournemouth, both teaching laboratories for running practical classes in, and then also analytical laboratories. And these are these have they really, I suppose, in a way, obviously have two functions. Firstly, this is where our staff are engaged in their own research, and our own PhD researchers are running their own research projects and so on. And then also these are made available to our students to run their research projects. This is a point that I'll come back to later, is that everybody who takes one of our master's degrees will run their own research project, will do their own piece of original research during the degree. And there you can see these are a couple of David Osselton's forensic toxicology students working away there, and the lady on the left is looking at survival. These are all cups of blood. How lovely! These are all. This student is looking at survival of drugs in them. And there you get a sense of some of our other laboratories there, particularly our human bone laboratory. We've got what, as far as I'm aware of, is the largest purpose-designed human osteology teaching laboratory in the country, and because we designed it from scratch, it's purpose-built essentially and works very well. And we have a really nice suite of skeletal collections. So you can see in that image in the top right there, these are people looking at human evolution and primatology and so on. We also have a very large collection of teaching casts relating to anatomically modern people, to disease in the skeleton, to variation in populations, to how we can tell age at death, how we can tell the sex of individuals from their skeletons and so on. And then we combine this use of all our teaching casts with the use of real archaeological remains. And we curate over 700 archaeological skeletons in our collections, which we make available to our students throughout the time of their degree, because this is the way to produce really skilled and competent people during the 12 months of a master's degree. Now, another point that is specific to master's level teaching is that, unlike teaching at undergraduate level, students are not in a position where they only set foot in the lab when they have timetabled teaching. This isn't what we want to see at all. What we do with our master's students is all our laboratories are on code locks, and at the beginning of the year we give everybody the codes and we say, look, the labs are available for your use. They are available 7 days a week. You can come in any time you like, make use of the equipment, make use of the collections, and this is the way you really get the most out of your master's degree. And every year we see the students who take us up on this offer, the students who come in and work repeatedly in the labs are the ones that do well. And it's because that's what you really are when you're investing in a master's degree. That's what you're really investing in. You're investing in an opportunity, and we can't stress it enough to our students how important it is to take that. And then there, in the following slide, you can see another of the kind of simulations we set up, and our forensic anthropology and forensic toxicology students and so on will be attending this sort of scene in a couple of weeks' time. This is running at Bournemouth Airport, where we have a good relation with the staff there. And this is another point about our degrees. We have a lot of professional links and contacts outside the university, and we make use of them. So what we do at the airport is we work with the fire crews. And so when they have their fire simulation training exercises, we combine that and run an air crash simulation. And you can see our students in their crime scene suits in the bottom two images there, that after the fire crews have put the fire out, they have the job of being the forensic team that has to go in and investigate the air crash. And then there are some scenes of our crime scene training units, which parts of it are set up as a house, parts of it are set up as shops and offices and so on. It has cameras throughout, so the tutors can watch what the students are doing when they're investigating their scenes and so on. And so this is something that comes into particularly into relevance for the toxicology students. And so to come on to some of the specific details of what makes up these different courses, what gives them their particular character. To start off with, we have the MSc in bioarchaeology, which you will remember is the degree that's particularly looking at past populations of people. So this is looking at recent centuries, recent millennia, and so on. And so what we do is we start with, we have our courses are broken down to what we call units, which is just basically what you call modules or courses in many other universities. And most of the degrees are a mix of core units, which everybody takes on that degree, and then options which allow you to pursue your own particular interests. And so on bioarchaeology, we start with a unit in human functional anatomy, and this is just very detailed anatomy of the skeleton. We don't just teach the bones as well, and whereas at undergraduate level people have often learned the bones of the skeleton, at postgrad level we teach the skeleton in a great deal of detail, but we also don't teach it in isolation. We teach the muscles and the soft tissue structures that interact with the skeleton, because if you understand those, you'll understand lots of things a lot better. You'll understand injuries at a much better level. You will understand disease pathology in the skeleton at a better level, and so on. And it informs all the other teaching that we do on the course. Then we have principles and methods in human osteology, and this is all the basic nuts and bolts of what we can do with human skeletal remains. So it's how do we tell sex, how do we tell age at death, how can we tell how tall somebody was, and so on. So what in forensics we call biological profiling, but very important whichever area of biological anthropology you want to work in. And then the archaeology of human remains is specifically looking at human populations in the past. How do we make sense of them as a population group? How do we make sense of burial practices? How do we make sense of burned bone and so on? And then there are some choices that you have. So there is management of archaeological material. So some people doing this course will have done a lot of archaeological study before. Some people won't have done any. And so what we're looking at is the range of different materials that you'll find in archaeology as well as bone. There is principles and methods of zooarchaeology, so you can have some study of animal bone on this degree if you want to, if that's what you're interested in. Techniques of archaeological recovery. Again, some people will have done a lot of archaeology and may have done a lot of digging before they take this degree. Some people might not have done any. So that unit is designed for people who haven't done any, to really get the basics of how archaeological material is located and recovered. And then lastly, we've also got a marine unit, which people may be interested in when doing that degree. And then we've also got two further options. Either you can look at human evolution, or you can look at, there's a unit called Humans, Animals and Diet, and this is about how humans have managed non-human animals in the past. And then we have our Biological Anthropology MSc. This has some similarities to the previous one, but has much more of a slant on looking at the deep past. So it looks at primate behavior and ecology. So looking at primates, our nearest living relatives. Also looking at human evolution in a great deal of depth and a great deal of detail. We also have the Methods in Zooarchaeology unit on that degree, and that is because it's all about comparative anatomy, and that's what we want people to learn. It's not just, we want people not just to understand the modern human skeleton. We want them to be able to compare it to other species, and so that's really very important. And then, as you can see on the right hand side there, some of the other units are available as well. So techniques of archaeological recovery and recording again, and principles and methods in human osteology, if that's something that people would choose to do, and so on. Then we have the Forensic Anthropology MSc. This has fewer options to choose from, but there's a good reason for that, and that's because forensic anthropology is a very specific application, and there's a very set range of material that we would want people to have studied in it. And so again, they do human functional anatomy, so very detailed look at the skeleton, principles and methods, so age, sex and all those sorts of things. They do a unit called bodies of evidence, and this is all about what has happened to an individual. How can we interpret injuries to the skeleton? How do we interpret the diseases they picked up while they were alive? How can we tell what happened after they died, what the post-mortem changes that are visible on the skeleton? Very important in telling us how a body has been treated. So very highly relevant in forensic work. And then lastly, we do a unit there called professional practice. And this is about how do you conduct yourself as an expert witness? How do you act for the courts and the police? Because somebody may be a very good anthropologist in the lab wearing their white coat. They may be very good at talking to other scientists, but can you talk to a jury? Can you convince a judge that you know what you're talking about? And so that unit is full of simulations, like the mass grave simulation I showed earlier. We have visits to Crown Court to actually see the courts in action. We get you to produce expert witness statements rather than scientific reports. So you write your work up as a statement for the court, and then at the end of the unit we run a courtroom exercise. Everybody comes in their suits, and you are cross-examined on your work to see if you can stand up to it. And so it's a really important assessment. And then people taking this degree can also take a unit in forensic archaeology if they want to see how this material comes out of the ground in a modern context, or they can do the basic archaeological techniques unit for people who haven't done any archaeology at all. And then this leads into forensic archaeology, which is the other side of the coin for that degree, really, where we've got core units of forensic archaeology. So it's how do we locate modern buried material, and how do we extract it from the ground in a scientific and a well-recorded manner. If you do forensic archaeology, you do principles and methods in human osteology, because although you won't need to know the skeleton in as much detail as an anthropologist, you still need to have a good understanding and be able to recognize the human skeleton. And then there is a unit called Advanced Forensic Archaeology, which only the forensic archaeologists take, because they're looking in much greater detail than the other degrees in this kind of application. And then again, the forensic archaeologists do professional practice in forensic science, so they will also go to court at the end of the degree after they've excavated some simulated burials and written their reports on them, how they recorded the grave, how you drew it, photographed it, and so on. And again, the question is, can you convince the court? And then, as you can see on the right there, this degree can be combined with a range of different options so that people can also sort of build, to an extent, a bespoke degree that fits their own interests. And then, looking at forensic toxicology by research, this is a degree that doesn't have as many units on it, but that's because the by research element means that these students do a large, a particularly large research project as part of their degree, and that carries a lot of the weight of the final marks. But it's not an entirely research-based master's. There's still this nice taught element to give it that backbone of instruction. So you study forensic toxicology with David Osselton, and the forensic tox students have got their own dedicated lab that they're the only people allowed to use it, that's recently been refurbished, so they always seem to be very happy with that. Laboratory and research skills, again, this is specifically run by Professor Osselton and tailored towards that particular discipline. And then again, the forensic toxicologists, same thing again, with a slightly different flavour. They take the professional practice unit because, again, they have to be able to stand up in court at the end and be convincing. Then the MSc in osteoarchaeology, well, really looking at the units there that are listed, you can see the sort of flavour of this degree again. Really, this is a degree that combines the study of human bone, looking at some of the units I've already mentioned there, with the study of animal bone. And then there's a fair degree of optionality on the right-hand side to pick and choose the bits of the two that appeal to you most. So some people will go more towards the human route, some people will be more interested in animal bone and comparative anatomy. Then we have our Maritime Archaeology, MSc, which I suppose in a way speaks for itself. Again, a bit like forensic anthropology, this is a very specialised area of study, and so the units, as you can see, all the units on the left-hand side there, these are all related to a very, very specific set of questions relating to submerged material, and then these are supplemented on the right-hand side by a set of options that allow people to pursue their own interests, even within maritime archaeology. And then, last of all, we have our MSc Archaeology, so just the straight archaeology masters, which I've left this to the end, but the point is that this only has one core unit, which is the Techniques of Archaeological Recovery unit, because we want to get everybody up to the same standard in terms of how they record, how they locate, and how they recover material. But then the rest of that degree is essentially, it gives people an opportunity to build a bespoke archaeology degree that's at postgraduate level that fits their particular interests. So the reason we put this together really, and two reasons. One is that we found we had students who had multiple interests that weren't catered for by other degrees. For example, I had a student who is, she's a very highly qualified diving instructor, and she's interested in marine archaeology, but she's also interested in human remains, and she wanted to take a master's level degree that could combine the two, because she's particularly interested in human remains from shipwrecks. And previously that wasn't available here or anywhere else, but now this is an option that is open, and you can combine a wide range of different interests into a bespoke master's degree at bespoke archaeology degree at master's level. And something I've mentioned, touched upon briefly already, is at the end of everybody's degree. In all of these in all of these MSc courses, at the very least, a third of the marks for the whole degree are made up by your research project, and students pursue a very wide range of different and often very interesting projects with us. What we want to see is people engaged in practical research themselves. Whether it's with human bone, whether it's with drugs, whether it's with archaeology, we're happy to have people studying a really broad range of areas. And what I always say to people is that as long as it's relevant to your degree and it is doable, as long as it's achievable in the time, I'm happy for people to pursue pretty much anything they like, and we get some really interesting and really wide-ranging projects, as you can see there. So there are some examples there, things like near-body drug screening, pharmacogenomics, so looking at DNA and drug absorption. Some of my own areas, things like injuries to the skeleton, identification of human remains, designer drugs, as it says there. We have a lot of people studying things like decomposition and taphonomic changes with these outdoor research centre that we've got, and so on. Some people will test methods in human osteology or test methods in archaeology, such as new methods of recording and so on. We have a lot of equipment that people can make use of as well. For archaeology, we have over £1 million worth of excavation and remote sensing equipment that's available for students to get out and use. And just like the labs, we say to students, you know, it's up to you. You've made a big investment in a degree. The equipment is there, and the smart students get their hands on it and go out and use it. And then there's just another example of a dissertation project. This is something that we ran with several students in cooperation with our local police firearms unit. And this was a range of ballistic experiments that we ran. And you can see there we had to devise a whole range of methods of making this work so that it was done safely, but also repeatable and recordable. And what we aim to do is produce projects that students can actually publish at the end, because this looks very, very good on your CV. In terms of entry to the programs, here are just some of the more sort of technical details at the end. So a point there, first of all, duration and delivery. Master's degrees, unlike an undergraduate degree, they're a 12-month endeavour. They run for 12 months solidly. There are many undergraduate programs in the UK tend to finish shortly after Easter. At master's level, we carry on teaching into the summer, and it really is it's a very full year. It's a very intensive year. So we usually teach over 3 semesters. And in terms of entry points, what we're looking for usually is a 2-1 degree, or the international equivalent of that, so a UK 2-1. We will at times accept people with 2-2 degrees, but then we look very closely at their specific circumstances. We look at their references. We look at whether they've done a dissertation before and did they do it well. We look at whether there are any specific parts of their previous degree that are very relevant to what they want to study now. So we're happy to take people with 2-2s, but this will involve quite a bit of scrutiny by the program leader to be sure that that course is going to be right for that person and that they're going to succeed on it. And so what we're looking for in the 3 degrees on the left there, generally the subjects we regard as relevant are archaeology or anthropology type degrees, but we will consider other subjects, but we'll have to talk to applicants about that. But we do sometimes get students from completely different backgrounds who do very, very well. For example, I've had students who've studied things like theology or English literature convert to come and study anthropology with me, and they've done extremely well, purely because they've put an enormous amount of work in. And then there you can see for these other degrees, again, these are all archaeology related, so we're looking for generally archaeology or anthropology related prior study, but we are prepared to be flexible on that. But as I say, that will involve quite a bit of scrutiny by the program leader. And then lastly, there is forensic anthropology and forensic toxicology there, and there we accept people with usually either forensic science or chemistry type degrees for forensic toxicology. And then for our forensic archaeology, forensic anth, we tend to look for people either with archaeology, anthropology, or forensic science backgrounds, and either of those three is usually fine. And then I'm just coming towards the end of this presentation now, but there are just a few quotes from our own students. I won't read these out in great detail, but there's just a few points there. So, studying at BU gave me not just a good scientific foundation, but also the skills to practice, which students tell us time and again. And then highlights of my time studying include anthropology, which is nice to know, particularly anthropology lab, as it said there, the use of real physical remains, and the simulations. And then there's just a range of the sorts of forensic jobs and the range of the sorts of employers that our students have found employment with afterwards. Also, a number of our students go on to further study, to doctoral level study, and every year we have a couple of students on each degree that will go off to do PhDs elsewhere. And then, just lastly, here's a few of the archaeological projects that we're involved with in the department. So this is, as you can see, a lot of students standing in a big circle around a very large site there. This is what we call our Big Dig. And students taking forensic archaeology or taking the MSc archaeology automatically are allowed to come out to parts of the Big Dig. So you can, this runs for 5 or 6 weeks over the summer. You can pay extra to be there for the whole thing, but even if you don't, we always make sure that we get the master students out for a couple of weeks anyway. And then there we can see our own students who are excavating last year on our training dig, and this is a range of Roman burials which generated a great deal of interest, particularly a great deal of media interest last year. There's a project run by one of our professors, Tim Darville's, one of the few living people to have excavated at Stonehenge, and that's ongoing. That's a project at a Neolithic tomb site in Germany that we've been running every summer. I have colleagues involved in working out in the Near East, looking at the beginnings of agriculture out in Jordan. We have a very large, slightly strange-sounding project in the department looking at chickens, running to nearly £2 million. You may wonder why anybody's going to spend £2 million on studying chickens, and this is because this species actually constitutes 50% of all the meat eaten in the world, and it's not a very genetically diverse species. And this is looking at the entire history of humans' relationship with chickens to see how we've got to this position. And this is, as you can see, in collaboration with 4 or 5 other universities, with Bournemouth leading the project. And then people with interests in maritime archaeology will be, I would hope, very excited to hear about the Swash Channel wreck that we have in Poole Harbour. This is the wreck of a 17th century ship, very well preserved, enormous number of artefacts that have been brought up from it. Our maritime archaeology students dive it every year, and some really exciting material is coming up. And essentially, it's another Mary Rose. A lot of people don't even realise it's there. And then there are just 5 reasons for studying archaeology and anthropology. And then just a last point about archaeology in particular, that the point is that this is a subject that has a very broad range of transferable skills. It doesn't just qualify you to work in archaeology. Lots of archaeology graduates go on to work in a really wide range of other fields. And there we have some of our archaeology graduates' comments. So again, I won't read these out in detail, but there you go. The staff are very approachable, which is nice to know. And there you go. I found the course very exciting, etc. And then came to BU because I was impressed by the friendliness of the staff and the range of specialist facilities available. And then really, this just sort of repeats the same points that I've already made, so I'll jump on because I've talked for quite a long time now. Just to say right at the end, Bournemouth is a very good university in terms of the kinds of additional support that it makes available. We have a centre within the university that specialises in supporting and helping students with a very wide range of additional learning needs. This can be from physical disabilities to something like dyslexia, or, for example, I had a student last year who was profoundly deaf, who had a cochlear implant, who received a great deal of very useful help from that centre, and she went on to get a distinction in her masters, did extremely well with us. And there's also a great deal of sort of additional study support available, particularly to students who are not used to studying at British universities. And now that brings me just to my very last slide, so I'm happy to throw things open to questions if anybody has anything they want to ask. And I'll hand back to my colleague, so over to you, Hannah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Martin Smith, for presenting today. Right. If you have any questions, and I've noticed that we have 8 attendees and 7